It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, our friends over at HP published their third quarter results. I want to go through those today on the end of the day with Ray. Get you ready for the long weekend, right, folks? So the first thing I want to do is I want to remind everybody, please go to the OEM's websites when they publish their financials and read through these things. And folks, really read through them, dig deep through them. They got archived information there that, HP, I think they go all the way back to 2016 when you get up these little snapshot reports and just compare 2016 to 2017 and compare that to 2021. I mean, it's all right there, right? I mean, we need to look at this stuff, don't we? You would think. Anyway, what I wanted to do is let's just pull up the results page real quick. So they say their third quarter results are $4.9 billion. They had a 24% increase over the same quarter last year. Well, I always say whippy to those numbers because it was a global pandemic last year, and they should have some kind of increase as we're starting to unwind this pandemic. But ladies and gentlemen, here's what I want to read that's kind of a little bit disturbing about the print business. They say, office continued gradually recovery, including double-digit revenue growth in managed print services. They're talking about double-digit revenue growth in managed print services. What in the hell does that even mean? I look through these financials. I don't see a section that says managed print services and what they did last quarter, what they did the quarter, back in 2020. They don't separate that out, but they're telling all of us that it just grew. They had all this growth in managed print services revenue. What revenue? What was the growth? I think they should answer that question. They also say Instant Ink revenue and total subscriptions grew more than 30% year over year. Remember, it's like the last few quarters they kept talking about how they sold X amount of subscriptions. I think we got up to like 9.5 million subscriptions the last time they talked about this. Now they're not talking about the millions of subscriptions they're selling. They're just talking about this 30% growth. Again, I can't stand when people throw out these percentages with no basis. 30% growth, what does that mean? What does that really mean? You had growth in subscriptions? Did you have growth in the revenue from the subscriptions? What exactly does that mean? Did you have 30% growth in cancellations of subscriptions? Folks, maybe I'm being a little sarcastic here, but what the hell? This is the largest print provider in the world. We all would agree with that. They have the largest base of machines in the marketplace. And when you read their financials sometimes, it's scary at best. They talked about how they're doing some innovative things around 3D printing. That's fantastic. Medical applications for podiatrists, that's fantastic stuff. HP talks about how they're going to save the world. That's all fantastic stuff. But how does that help our friends in the Document Editing channel assess the OEMs they need to do business with? How does all that help? It's just a bunch of noise. It's just a bunch of things to try to make shareholders, I guess, feel good. But ladies and gentlemen, what I want to tell you here today is I went back in time to 2016. So without any further ado, let's go back on a road trip. Back in 2016, HP's printing revenue was $4.4 billion. What did we just say? This is for the same quarter, but by the way, the third quarter in 2016. So $4.4 billion for the third quarter of 2021 is $4.9 billion. They grew $500 million in that many years. The largest print provider in the world, selling all these subscriptions. Hell, back in 2016, did they even have subscription printing? You'd think they'd be just knocking out of the park from that number. What happened in 2017? $4.7 billion. Well, they grew a little bit back then. Did they have subscription printing back then? No, they didn't have subscription printing back then. Were they selling all kinds of innovative 3D products back then? No, they weren't doing any of that back then. You know what else they weren't doing back then, folks? Well, wait a second. Let me just show you the numbers. Back in 2018, they did $5.2 billion. Ooh, everybody's saying, wow, they're just killing butt there. Well, that was a great year for them. Oh, my gosh. They're starting to really get in there. What a fantastic quarter. Third quarter of 2018, $5.2 billion. Third quarter of 2019, $4.9 billion. Started going backwards again. But then I started thinking to myself, well, what happened in the year of 2018 that would affect the revenue in the print business for HP? Well, I didn't have to go very far. Remember this? U.S. computer giant HP has struck a deal to take over Samsung's 1 billion printer business, finalized in November of 2017. Finalized in November of 2017, those numbers are going to start showing up where? In the third quarter of 2018. So it wasn't really any organic growth. It wasn't the fact they sold a bunch of subscriptions. It wasn't the fact that they went out there and disrupted the A3 marketplace. No, it was the fact that they added $1 billion worth of revenue that they could distribute through the quarters, right? Just something to think about. If I'm wrong, please, Eureka or someone on the team, clarify that. But 21 versus 20. 3.9 billion, 4.9 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a global pandemic. And this week I've been talking about the two underdogs I see out there that people just don't give respect to, and they ought to be. They ought to be paying attention to them. And they were my friends over at QTR Sharp. So when everybody looks at these financials, they get all fired up about how much HP grew over the same quarter last year. Our friends over at QTR in their document solutions business, which would be the print sector, 43.3% growth over the same quarter last year. That kind of morphs the 24% growth that HP had, doesn't it? Look at our friends over at Sharp, their 8K Ecosystems, 36.8% growth over the same quarter last year. Again, beating the crap out of HP's 24%. So we need to put things in a realistic approach, right? We need to start thinking things realistically. And we need to start asking HP some questions that they refuse to seem to answer, right? So I'm going to ask them again. And like I said before, Eureka, you don't have to answer these if you can get someone on the team to do it. But enough bragging on your subscriptions, we're all tired of it. Without any science, without any details. It's just a crazy number you keep throwing out there. Now you're changing it from how many subscriptions you sold to the percentage of growth you had in the subscriptions. Do people really fall for this crap? I think you should be a little bit more detailed. In other words, what is the number of active subscriptions you have right now, and what's the number of inactive? Can you give us some information on this subscription stuff so that my dealer friends can actually understand what's going on in these subscriptions marketplace? Because you know what? Your subscriptions at people's houses, I think, is the biggest, craziest thing I've ever heard. And I don't, for one, believe it's going to work out. And I don't, for one, believe you're knocking out of the park based on subscriptions at people's houses. So here's another question. What is the revenue of subscriptions? Just tell us the revenue. Don't tell us you had 30%. What does that even mean? What is the number? Hey, this quarter we did X amount of millions of dollars in subscriptions. And this quarter last year we did this much in subscription business. Give us the numbers. Give us the details, right? What's the average end user revenue of a subscription? I mean, are we billing these people $1.99 a month? And that's going to hit a home run for us until they cancel the subscription? I mean, what does that mean? What are the volumes of print output per subscription? Could you tell us that at least? What's the output volume? What's the average volume? Are the people getting mad when they get the overages? Do they call you up and cancel the subscription? I mean, those would be great questions to know, right? Here's one for you. How is HP booking the subscription revenue? I'm just asking the question, how are you booking the revenue? If somebody signs up for a year subscription, they get 6 months free. Do you book the revenue for the whole year? And of course, you don't have any cost going out if you're doing that, right? You provide the subscription when the customer needs it. And so sooner or later, when you have to start shipping those supplies, that hits you as a cost with no revenue, unless you're counting the revenue when you ship the supplies. I'm just asking the question. It'd be nice to get that answered. How much revenue are you getting from Samsung 2017's acquisition? So in other words, if you looked at the Samsung purchase back in November of 2017, Samsung was doing nearly $1 billion in revenue. If you looked at the same store sales of that acquisition, where would they be today? Did you grow that business? Did that business shrink? What happened with that business? What happened with the aspirations of disrupting the A3 marketplace? I think we replaced that with the subscription marketplace, right? We don't talk about the A3 disruption too much anymore because we know how silly that is when the whole world's moving to A4. So now we switched to started talking about, the subscription model. Of course, we talk about the subscription model with absolutely zero real data, which is a little bit disturbing sometimes. Ladies and gentlemen, the OEMs are going to be challenged. Obviously, all of them are. But what we really have to start doing is we have to start asking the OEMs some tough questions, and we got to start digging deeper into these financials. And we need to start asking ourselves if the biggest one in the room, which we all would agree would be HP, there's no denying that. They have more market share than anybody. Well, they're flat from 2016. They're not growing their business. And my big concern with HP is this. I don't hear them talking about anything they're doing that's innovative. Now, I get it. 3D printing and doing things for the medical world, that's all great stuff, but that's not going to replace the evaporation of print revenue. I want to go back. I want to go back to the first slide. If you look at their personal systems, that big giant compute business they have over there, right? $10.4 billion for the quarter. It's flat, ladies and gentlemen. It's flat over the same quarter last year. Remember when we were talking, I've heard HP talking about this, right? A couple quarters ago, how many people were going to buy these, computers? Oh, the whole world's going remote. They're going to need all these computers. We're going to have to refresh all the computers that we sold 3 years ago. We're going to have fantastic. It's going to blow it out of the water. We're going to sell all these computers. Well, the reality of it is they're not selling all these computers. That business is flat. And so if the big business they have, the compute business is flat, you know, has it had growth since 2016? Absolutely it has. I'll give them that. But that business is going to get so pressured from competitors. It's just beginning. We all see how those desktops are moving more and more and more to what? Laptops, handheld devices. Equipment's getting smaller. Equipment's getting less expensive. More competition in that space. If all the operating systems are living in the cloud, what really is a computer? It's just a device to go to the cloud and get the stuff you need, right? You're going to see that space shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink in a revenue and a profit because it's going to get more and more commoditized. It's just a damn device. It'll be as commoditized as those little tiny inkjet printers are in people's houses. So ladies and gentlemen, I think there has to be a better vision over at HP. That's just my opinion. I think HP should answer those questions I asked them. Because I'm getting sick and tired of every single quarter listening to how many more subscriptions they sold. They changed it from a number to a percentage. They're talking about increases in managed print services. What does all that mean to the dealer network? Those independent businesses that I love. How's that helping them move the needle, move the ball? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to think about here. But until you, dealer owners, start going to these OEMs' financials and looking at them and digging through them and asking some questions. And you know what? If you ask a question and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, the OEM should be able to answer the question and set you straight, right? But if we don't even ask the questions, we're never going to learn. And there's one thing we all know for sure, my friends. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo and have a fantastic weekend.